Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we're bringing you our fourth part in our Aeon Trespass Odyssey instructional series. This will cover the battle setup and the Primordial Round of the battle. The next part will cover the Titan round of the battle. Also, if you haven't viewed our previous videos, be sure to check the description for links to them. Part 1 covered the basics of Aeon Trespass Odyssey. Part 2 covered the Voyage phase. Part 3, the Adventure phase. And then, of course, there will be a Part 6, which will cover kind of all the other rules that haven't been touched on yet. Gear, terrain, abilities, keywords, that sort of thing. Now, encounters happen when the Argonauts and their Titans encounter one of these Primordials. The players will control the Argonauts who will be piloting these Titans, while an AI deck will control the Primordial. The Titans need to deal a set number of wounds to slay the Primordial, while the Primordial tries to kill each of the Titans. Any battle listed on the timeline will be resolved in the encounter step, while other battles, such as the adversary attacking or narrative encounters resulting from story progression, may take place during other steps. When instructed to begin a battle, unless directed towards a specific battle setup in your cycle book, find the setup that is specific to the Primordial you're facing. So here we've got the Hecaton, and back here on pages 108 and 109, we have the Hecaton battle level 1 through 3 and level 4+. This includes all the setup rules of this specific battle and may sometimes introduce additional narrative elements and mechanics. Shows you where the Primordial goes, where your Titans will go, and any other terrain features. All battles take place on this battle board, and as you can see, it's a fairly large board, and so depending on the amount of space you have, you may need to save your campaign before the battle. As a reminder, saving the campaign is covered on page 22 of the rulebook. During battle, game elements may refer to the Titan. The Titan is represented by their Titan sheet as well as their matching miniature. Likewise, the Primordial is represented by their Primordial sheet and their miniature. The battle board is made up of a number of spaces that Titans and Primordials will move through. A Titan will take up one space, as you see here, while a Primordial generally will take up multiple spaces. Spaces are considered occupied if there is a miniature in them or a terrain tile that is considered an obstacle. All other spaces are empty spaces. Something is adjacent if the space it's on shares at least one edge with the other space. So this Titan and this Primordial are adjacent, while this Titan and this Primordial are not. In the game, there are two types of dice. You have the D10s that are attack dice, and these D6s that are power dice. Kratos tokens are a special type of cooperative token used by the players to enhance other players' attacks. These can help you hit, wound, escape Primordial response, and more. This is a break token, this is an opening token, and we'll learn more about Kratos tokens, as well as the Kratos pool, in the next video of this series. There are three main types of Primordials. The Hecaton is a regular Primordial. There are usually two regular Primordials in each cycle, as noted on the evolution track for your cycle. So we have Hecaton and Labyrinthorus. You can expect to face these at regular intervals through timeline battles. And as the campaign progresses, they will evolve and become more powerful. There are also adversary Primordials, such as this guy right here. Adversaries are powerful monsters actively hunting the Argo on the Voyage map, and so they come with a matching miniature that will follow you around on the Voyage map. And finally, there are boss Primordials. This is the ultimate foe and is an enemy unlike any other. Boss battles may be triggered from various story and Doom adventures, so you should always stay on your toes. They won't necessarily happen just at the end of a cycle. However, each cycle does lead to a final showdown with the boss Primordial. Until then, you can merely hope to keep it at bay. To begin the battle setup, first place the battle board in the center of the play area, of course. Next, place the trauma decks up here in their designated area. You'll have minor, major, grave, and obol. The Kratos deck goes here. and the Moros deck here. Place all of the dice as well as the Kratos tokens near all players. Each player takes the portrait of their Argonaut, as well as any Nemos cards they have, and place them in their play area. Each player places their Triskelion in their play area. It should be noted that any rage, fate, or danger that is accumulated over the previous phases is kept going into the battle. The Triskelions are not reset until you're told to do so, which is usually at the end of a battle. Each player chooses one of the available Titans to control. If there are at least 4 Titans available, each Argonaut must control one of them. It should be noted that it does not necessarily have to be the same Titan that Argonaut controlled in the last battle. Also, keep in mind that these 4 starter Titans are all referred to as Dreamwalkers and are identical in every way, and so the cards are just to help you differentiate between which one you have and which one another player has. However, if an Argo-bred Titan is used, such as the Earthshaker Titan, it's important to realize that only one copy of an Earthshaker may be in a battle at a time, regardless of how many you actually have on the Argo. Players now, as a group, assign gear cards from their Argo armory to the Titans. Each Titan is limited to 2 hands worth of weapons, so you could have the Well Knives because they take 2 hands, or a Siren Blade and a Siren Shield. It should be noted that it's possible players will come across certain Titans that have the ability to carry more than 2 hands worth of weapons. This symbol is support, and Titans can carry 2 of these. This symbol is armor, and a Titan can have 1 of these. This symbol indicates this is an attachment card, and they may have up to 3 of these attached to their Titan sheet and up to 1 attached to each of their gear cards. As you can see, an attachment may specify specifically what it could be attached to, in this case, attached to a gear card with the Spear trait. A player may never equip gear cards that would exceed the available slots of their Titan. Also, each Titan can only have 1 copy of a particular support card. So having Tackle Sheath and Stabilizers is fine, but having 2 Tackle Sheaths would not be. Players now choose from their available Argo abilities that they want to bring into the battle. Keeping in mind they are limited by their current AA, or Argo ability, limit. Many Argo abilities will require charges. As you can see, you bring 3 charges of the Arrow Barrage into combat, and you will use these tokens to indicate that. As it is used, you will simply remove 1 token, and then once there are no charges left, you obviously cannot use that ability anymore. The Primordial sheet is placed in the Primordial area here. You can see here the Titan's routine card goes here. Find the routine card. It will be double-sided. One side will say Menestus Routine. Use the side that says just Routine and place it here. And then over here it says Signature, and you'll find the signature card, which will have a normal backing like this, but with the X designation. Place the signature card here. Now take all of the Primordial's AI cards, separate them by their designation of Tier 1, 2, or 3. Do the same with their body part cards. The Tier 1 AI cards are quickly shuffled and then placed on the AI deck space here. The Tier 1 body part cards are done the same. AI 2 and 3 are placed below those cards, as are body part 2 and 3. Do not shuffle these 2. You want them to be clearly separated into 2 and 3. That way, when the time comes to escalate, which we'll talk about later, you'll be able to draw the appropriate card to escalate. Primordials are going to have a number of traits on here. For instance, we have Friendly Warning. Often the traits will be described on the Primordial card. You can see Friendly Warning is described here. Sometimes, however, traits will not be described on the card, and you will actually need to search through the Primordial's cards to find the appropriate trait card and make sure it is out on the board for ease of reference. And finally, set the board as described in the diagram, including any terrain, and find the matching terrain cards and place them in the terrain space next to the board in the top right corner. Next, you'll need to determine the primordial positioning. This is done by looking in your particular scenario. Here you see battle setup. We've got primordial positioning. It says to place the Hecaton miniature on the indicated space in the center of the board and then determine facing direction. It goes on to re-explain how you determine facing by looking at the bottom card of the minor trauma deck and turn the primordial in the direction indicated by the arrow in the lower left corner. So here's the minor trauma card. We flip it over. We see bottom left corner, we have an up arrow, so the primordial will face this direction. Next, you'll need to reference your Argo sheet and look at the evolution track. Regular primordials will evolve throughout the course of the game, starting possibly at level 0 as the Hecaton does, and going all the way up to level 4. You can see in the description of this battle, it says mark the leftmost empty box on the Hecaton evolution track. This box indicates the Hecaton's level during the battle. So let's say our evolution track looks like this currently. We fought a level 0 Hecaton, we fought a level 1, we then fought another level 1 Hecaton, causing us to X out this large box that could have been used for either the Hecaton or the Labyrinthorus. And then we now will have to fight a level 2 Hecaton, even though we still haven't fought a level 1 Labyrinthorus yet. Therefore, we will mark this box, and now we'll be dealing with a level 2. It should be noted that if the next monster you fight is a Labyrinthorus, you will be fighting a level 1. Even though this box has been marked, you still go back to the absolute leftmost box, and so you'll get to fight a level 1 Labyrinthorus, and then the next one, of course, would be a level 2 because there's no more level 1 boxes left for you. It should be noted that generally speaking, boss and adversary primordials are always fought at level 1. Players may notice that regular primordials may have levels above level 4, even though the evolution track only goes to 4. And adversaries and bosses may have levels above 1. These are only used in special circumstances when specifically told to do so by the book or some other effect. However, these will primarily be encountered in the Menestus Theater. After marking the evolution track, you should now handle any escalations that have occurred as a result of effects outside of battle. And again, we will explain escalations in the next video, as primarily they occur during the Titan round. However, after you have resolved any escalations, you are now ready to begin the battle. Battles in Aeon Trespass Odyssey are resolved in a series of alternating Primordial and Titan rounds and immediately end with the Argonaut's victory as soon as the Primordial is slain. A Primordial is slain once it has suffered wounds equal to its wounds value, so for a level 1, the value is 10. The battle may not always end with the Argonaut's victory, however, and it will end immediately with Argonaut's defeat as soon as all Titans die or the Argonauts retreat. Oftentimes, retreat may be the smart move if you fear you're about to experience a total party kill. So now let's discuss the Primordial Round. A battle will always begin with a Primordial Round unless otherwise indicated. Primordials are governed by a set of attributes, traits, and the AI deck and body part deck. No specific player controls them. Instead, players as a group will resolve instructions denoted on the AI and BP cards, and this will dictate their behavior. On the Primordial sheet, there is some information you should note. Down here, we have a Primordial diagram. Here we have its basic traits, and here we have its level-specific attributes and traits. The Primordial diagram shows the number of spaces the Primordial occupies, in the case of the Hecaton, 4, as well as its front, which, by the way, for this guy is this side, as well as its rear, which is this side. So you can see this white arrow indicates the front, and then you have these two rear arrows. The front is used for establishing targeting of a Primordial attack, while the rear spaces don't have general rules. So in a situation like this, you have 2 Titans in the front of the Primordial and 2 Titans in the rear of the Primordial. The Hermesian Pursuer has this symbol indicating a blind spot, and you can see here the blind spot is indicated as being in the 2 rear spaces. So in this case, these 2 Titans here are in this Primordial's blind spot. Blind spots are spaces that Primordial cannot see. Titans in blind spots are excluded from targeting unless the targeting specifically mentions the blind spot, of course. A Titan in a blind spot also gains +1 precision. The Labyrintharus has a weak spot here and here. That's what that symbol indicates. And so these two Titans are in this Primordial's weak spot. Weak spots can have different effects depending on the Primordial and are usually unlocked by some other effect or game element. This means that weak spots don't have an inherent effect on their own, so you'll have to keep an eye out for when the weak spot space becomes effective. Many Primordials will have unavoidable knockback listed here. In this case, it's unavoidable knockback 5. This represents the value of the unavoidable knockback done by the Primordial if it ends its movement on the same space as a Titan. Keep in mind, unavoidable knockback does not occur if the Primordial moves through the Titan space. This symbol indicates the Alpha Temenos is lumbering. A lumbering Primordial is massive and as a consequence cannot suffer pushback or knockback. This symbol indicates that the Alpha Temenos has a vantage point. A vantage point is not automatically available at the beginning of a battle. However, if the Titans meet the required stipulations to open up a vantage point, which will be specific to that Primordial, then that means the Primordial can now be mounted by the Titans. When fighting higher level Primordials, be sure to very carefully read these traits as it will be providing new traits. Sometimes it will remove older traits, and it's just very important to get a very clear picture and completely understand what is going on at the level you're currently fighting. Now, these three attributes are the main attributes of a Primordial. This first symbol here is the to hit symbol. It shows how hard the Primordial is to hit. This next symbol is the speed of the Primordial and shows the maximum number of spaces the Primordial can travel in a single move. And as we mentioned before, here are the wounds, showing how many times the Primordial must be wounded to kill it. This symbol here and here is known as the Aeon Trespass bonus. As you can see, it matches this symbol on the body part cards. A positive indicator here will make the body part card more difficult to wound, and a negative indicator here will make it easier. Here you can see there is a danger bonus, and this increases the danger dealt by each Primordial attack. To be clear, that's not by each hit unless specifically stated. And here you can see the escalation symbol. At the start of the battle, escalate the Primordial a number of times equal to this value. As we've mentioned, the Primordial has both a signature and a routine card. The signature is a signature attack, while the routine is what the Primordial will do when it cannot find a target. The signature behaves just like an AI card, however, for all purposes, it is not an AI card. Usually, routines are devastating effects that should be avoided at all costs. They often affect not only the Titans or the battle board, but the Argo itself. As you can see here, this routine, Idle Hands, causes the Argo to lose one hull. Now that we've covered the Primordial basics, let's get into the actual Primordial Round. At the start of a Primordial Round, sometimes the Primordial will have an effect that triggers. In that case, it's resolved before drawing the AI card. If there is more than one start of round effect, the players may resolve these effects in any order that they like. Once any start of round effects have been resolved, draw the top AI card from the deck. AI cards are the heart of the Primordial Round, and most AI cards are Primordial Attacks. After drawing the AI card, we next need to resolve targeting. You can see here, the first line says target the closest Titan in front in range. Well, these two Titans are not in front, as everything from this line forward would be in front of the Primordial. These two Titans are in front. This one is the closest, and so this would not be the target, but this one would be the target. Now, let's say both of these were out of range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see this Titan is now out of range, and that one already was. So now, no Titan is both the closest in front and in range, so we move to the next line, closest Titan in sight. And so now, this Titan back here would be the target. There are a number of typical targeting instructions that you should be familiar with. You'll find them on page 37 right here. You can see there's quite a few. I'm not going to go through each of them. They are, for the most part, self-explanatory, and so you shouldn't have much of an issue once you've read through this set of instructions once or twice. It should also be noted for targeting that if a Titan has a blind spot or a vantage point, the Hecaton actually has neither, but blind spots and vantage points are never in the monster's line of sight. And so they will not be targeted unless the AI card specifically indicates that the blind spot or vantage point is targeted. There's also a priority target token that may occasionally be assigned to certain Titans. The priority target token serves as a tiebreaker for the purpose of targeting. The Titan with the priority target token is considered to be the priority target. And so in this case, both Titans meet the criteria on cold open. They are tied for being in front and in range and closest. And so this Titan will be targeted since he has the priority target token. This token is likely to change hands throughout the battle. Anytime during a battle the Titan increases their rage for any reason, they then compare it to all other Titans. If their rage is the highest amongst the Titans, they will then take the priority target token from the previous owner. The battle will always start with a priority target as well. It will be assigned to whoever has the highest rage at the beginning of the battle. If two or more Titans have equal highest rage, then simply choose which one to assign the priority target token to. On the other hand, if two or more Titans are equally viable targets, as you see here, and neither of them is the priority target, the players may choose which one to be targeted. If the Titan with the priority target is killed, then pass it to whoever has the highest rage. It's possible that a Titan will have an effect that tells them they cannot lose the priority target token. It's also possible that a second Titan may gain a similar effect. For those purposes, the Titan who had the priority target first will remain the priority target. If the Titan with the priority target in that case dies, then the Titan who has that effect still will receive it. Now let's discuss line of sight. Line of sight is used to determine whether the Primordial has an unobstructed view of the Titan and vice versa. A Titan must have line of sight to the Primordial to perform an attack, and the Primordial must have line of sight to the target if the command line requires it to be in front or in sight. So as you can see here, both command lines require line of sight because the first one is in front and the second one is in sight. It should be noted that, let's say this was our priority target again, and the Titan was simply instructed to attack the priority target, it didn't say anything else, then line of sight would not be required. It would simply seek out the priority target. Check line of sight, draw an imaginary line from to check line of sight, draw an imaginary straight line from a corner of any space occupied by the attacker to a corner of any space occupied by the target. If the line passes through an obscuring terrain space or a red line, there is no line of sight. So in this case, it does not pass through a red line. It passes along the edge here, which is a green line. So the Primordial would have line of sight to this Titan, would not to this Titan, would to this Titan, and would not to this Titan because these columns are obscuring. Now, if it passes through the edge of a red line like this, so if it went down the edge of this red line, then there is no line of sight. Same thing with obscuring terrain. So from here to here, it crosses it goes along the edge of this obscuring terrain, and so there's no line of sight to that Titan. If line of sight goes through the corner of an obscuring terrain, then there is line of sight. So this Titan does have line of sight to this Primordial. However, if it goes through two corners like this, there is no line of sight. As we've mentioned, blind spots and vantage points are never in the Primordial's line of sight, and a miniature will never block line of sight to itself or other miniatures. A multi-space obscuring terrain tile such as the city does not block line of sight to or from targets that are standing inside any of its spaces. So right now the Hecaton still has line of sight to this Titan, but if the Titan was on the other side of the city, now line of sight has been obscured. Now let's discuss Primordial Movement. Most Primordial attacks will instruct you, as Cold Open does, to move the Primordial. When this occurs, the Primordial will always try to move and tries to move as close to the target as possible. This, of course, is up to the Primordial's speed value, which, as we've said, at level 1 for the Hecaton is 6. The Primordial stops only when it becomes adjacent to the target, unless stated otherwise, of course. One of those exceptions to stopping adjacent would be if the Primordial is using a ranged attack. In that case, it stops the moment it is within range. Unless stated otherwise, at the beginning of a move, the Primordial will always turn to face the target first. So let's say it was targeting this Titan over here, it turns to face that Titan. The Primordial always will move along the shortest possible path. In other words, through the fewest number of spaces. Primordials can also move through any other game element, whether it's terrain or other Titans. If the target is not in a straight line, as you see here from the Primordial will zigzag move towards it cardinally, switching the movement axis after every space traveled until it reaches a position that would allow it to continue to move towards the target in a straight line. So for instance, the Hecaton might go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When zigzagging like this, the players may decide the starting direction, either horizontal or vertical, of the Primordial movement. If 2 or more routes are considered equally short, the players get to choose which one. Occasionally, a Primordial might move away from Titans, and this may cause it to move into the board edge. So as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, and now we're at the board edge. But the Primordial still has 3 more movement. In this case, it will continue to move along the edge, prioritizing a direction that will initially lead it away from the most Titans. So, 1, 2, 3. Keep in mind, as we mentioned, that Primordials ignore terrain tiles for the most part. However, if the terrain tile has the destructible keyword, then when the Titan moves onto the destructible terrain, it is removed from the board. As we've also mentioned, Titans do not impede Primordial movement in any way. But a Titan on a space the Primordial moved through or onto suffers crash. So let's say this Primordial moved through this space to get to this Titan. This Titan would suffer crash. First, this Titan will gain 1 danger, and then it suffers knockdown. If, on the other hand, the Primordial ends its movement on a Titan space, so let's say again it's targeting this Titan, and it moves here, it has now ended its movement on this Titan's space here. That Titan will now suffer crash and unavoidable knockback. So it gains the danger, as we mentioned before. It's knocked down, as we mentioned before. And now the Hecaton has unavoidable knockback of 5, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unavoidable knockback must always occur in a straight line away from the Primordial, and it's subject to all normal knockback rules. However, it cannot be lowered or ignored in any way other than effects that cause you to stop, such as running into an obstacle or something like that. Also, if an effect specifically refers to unavoidable knockback, that of course can affect unavoidable knockback. Now, if there are 2 equally viable directions, for instance, this is away from the Primordial, but also this is away from the Primordial. In that case, the player chooses which direction to be knocked back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be equally allowed. Occasionally, a Primordial may target a Titan that is outside of their effective range. In such cases, they will still perform the movement, trying to get as close as possible. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then they simply skip the attack step and go straight to the after attack step. It should be noted that occasionally you will see move X and move 2X. Move X will indicate a specific amount of movement that overrides the Primordial's movement value, and move 2X might say something like move to the center of the board, and the Primordial can do that regardless of how far away it is. To determine if a Titan is in front of a Primordial, simply draw a straight line across the board in front of it. So here it's facing, the front of the Primordial is here, and so along this line in both directions as far as the board goes is in front. That means that this Titan is not in front, but the other 3 Titans are, even this one all the way over here. On the other hand, if you want to say something is in the rear of the Titan, that only indicates the 2 spaces that are specifically indicated for the Hecaton as the rear. Finally, keep in mind when moving the Primordial that the Primordial will always turn towards its target when it begins and ends its movement. It will turn towards its target before it performs an attack, unless the attack targets a zone, or it will turn in the designated direction when another effect instructs you to turn it. However, it does not turn when it's being moved forcefully, so if this Titan knocked back the Hecaton, it would simply sidestep that way and would not actually turn. If it is simultaneously attacking 2 or more Titans, it will not turn, and as we mentioned, it does not turn during a zone attack. Generally, an attack without a specific type is considered melee, such as Cold Open here. Melee attacks require adjacency. Remember, adjacency requires them to be orthogonally adjacent. Diagonal is not considered adjacent. The other possible attacks that you'll find in Cycle 1 would be range X. So let's say it was range 4. In this case, 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be within range. A simultaneous attack is performed against multiple targets. Each of them is resolved as a separate attack, which means you have to perform a separate evasion roll. The attacks can be resolved in any order, however, but for gameplay purposes, they are considered to have happened at the same time. Therefore, a chain break caused by a Titan does not invalidate the unresolved attacks against the other Titans. Keep in mind, we'll discuss chain break in more detail in just a moment. There's also sequential attacks in Cycle 1. These are performed against multiple targets, but they are performed one at a time in a specific order. Therefore, a chain break during one of these attacks will stop the sequence and invalidate any lingering attacks. If a sequential attack targets all Titans in path, it happens during the Primordial Movement. Move the Primordial towards its target one space at a time. When it would move onto a space occupied by a Titan, instead of moving through it, stop, resolve an attack, so in this case against this Titan, and then continue moving towards the original target. When it reaches its original target, resolve an attack against that target as well. Primordial movement during this attack will not cause crash. But if the Primordial does stop on a space occupied by another Titan in order to attack a Titan, then it will still cause unavoidable knockback equal to the Primordial's unavoidable knockback value as normal. Zone attacks are performed against all Titans in a designated zone. As you can see here, it says target zone 3 for this attack, which means that every Titan you see here is within the zone because zones are measured both orthogonally and diagonally. Each Titan performs a separate evasion roll, but they are considered to happen simultaneously. This means that a chain break during one attack will not invalidate the other ones. This also means that if a Titan manages to move outside the zone after the attack has begun, it will not invalidate the attack. It's also possible that instead of having zone 3 like this, you may have a more specific zone where the zone diagram is actually on the card itself. A zone attack may target a specific Titan, but still it will affect the other Titans in the designated area. The Primordial is not considered to be in the zone, and if there were any Titans on a vantage point, then they would not be in the zone either. Certain Primordials have attacks known as judgments. These are mental assaults that force the target to perform a special skill test. A judgment will designate a particular skill, and sometimes may designate 2 skills. If it designates 2 skills, the target will choose which one to use. Judgment attacks usually have unlimited range, and they actually are not considered an attack for the purpose of other effects, which means they cannot be mitigated by an armor roll. The target of judgment will resolve the test, as we mentioned, instead of an evasion roll. They also cannot be re-rolled using evasion re-rolls or blocked with the block X keyword. In Aeon Trespass Odyssey, the Primordial doesn't roll to hit the Titan. It always hits, unless the target manages to evade the attack. In the upper right corner of the AI card here, each Primordial attack has a number of evasion dice, in this case, 4. And it has an evasion roll difficulty underneath it, in this case, 6+. To perform an evasion roll, you must roll the specified number of dice, in this case, 4, and it must always include 1 crit die, which is the white one, and the Titan wants to roll equal to or higher than the difficulty. In this case, you can see everything is equal to or higher than 6, 7, 9, and 10. If the Titan had any gear cards or effects that would give them an evasion bonus, such as this gear here, there's the evasion bonus right there, they would add it to the result of each die rolled, which would mean that if they had rolled, say, a 5 on this die, if I can find it, there it is, then they still would have had a successful evasion. Some cards have evasion rerolls, as you see here. These can now be used to re-roll the specified number of dice. So let's say that actually 2 of these had been failures. We could re-roll them now as a result of this. You can also use fate to re-roll. But remember, each die can only be re-rolled once regardless of where that re-roll comes from. Once you're done re-rolling, then compare the results to the evasion roll difficulty. Each result equal to or higher than the evasion roll difficulty is a successful evade, whereas each result lower is a hit. So the original roll that I did, everything was a successful evade, but in this case, the Titan is getting hit twice. If the Titan has any gear with the block keyword, as you see here, that may now be triggered to ignore the indicated number of hits. If you have fully evaded all hits, as you see here, then it is considered a full evade, and you should proceed straight to the after attack part of the AI card, as well as trigger all full evade abilities. If it is not a full evade, as you can see there's 1 hit here, then you'll proceed to the attack effects. It's important to remember that some weapons have defensive capabilities. Shields, for instance, are considered weapons, but obviously they are primarily for defensive purposes. If you use any of these effects on the evasion roll or attack consequences, that weapon becomes your active weapon until the end of this primordial attack. You can only have 1 active weapon at a time. So for the rest of the attack, you would not be able to use a different defensive weapon. Now keep in mind, when the next primordial attack occurs or when it's the Titan's turn, they can freely switch amongst their weapons. Some gear cards, such as the Shipwrecker Shield, have a crit evade ability. If you roll a crit using the crit die during an evade, these crit evade abilities and effects trigger. A crit result can trigger multiple crit evade effects, but remember, you can only have 1 active weapon at a time, and therefore only 1 weapon crit evade will trigger at a time. If for some reason a Titan moves outside of the attack's effective range after it becomes a target but before resolving an evasion roll, such as by using the Iapetus Lifeguard, so the Primordial now has this Titan in its sights, the Titan moves 1 space back, and now the Primordial comes up short. This attack now cannot be performed, and the evasion roll as well as attack effects are not resolved. This is an out-of-reach evade. Instead, the Primordial resolves its movement toward the target, then proceeds straight to the after-attack actions and effects, and that is it. So, as we said, if after performing the evasion roll, any re-rolls using block, the Titan is left with at least 1 hit, you must resolve the attack consequences. The most common consequences are effects and trauma draws. Thankfully, most attacks scale with the number of hits you receive, so a partial evade still makes the attack weaker. Players will resolve all attack effects in the order they are written on the card, 1 sentence at a time. There are many possible attack effects, but the most common ones will deal danger. As you can see here, each hit deals 1 danger. So here we've got 1 hit, so this Titan will gain 1 danger. After being dealt danger, the Titan will have to resolve a trauma draw, and we'll discuss that in just a moment. Other attack effects may involve other statistics and tokens. They may deal fate, they may deal rage, or ambrosia or despair tokens. These are all resolved the same way as being dealt danger, but it does not cause a trauma draw. Only danger will cause the trauma draw. It's also possible that certain attacks will include effects that cause you to gain a condition or another game element, or suffer the effects of abilities such as pushback or knockback. When you are dealt danger as a consequence of the Primordial Attack, if you have any gear cards with armor dice, which are these right here, you must perform an armor roll. Roll a pool of power dice equal to the total of all armor dice on all of your equipped cards, remembering that you can only have 1 active weapon at a time. During an armor roll, you do not count the power symbol, which is that one. You count the triangular symbol, which is the potential symbol. You will subtract all potential symbols from the total value of danger dealt. If it reduces your danger gain to 0, then you do not resolve the trauma draw. It should be noted that just like power dice, armor dice cannot be re-rolled using fate. Now let's discuss the trauma draw. In Aeon Trespass Odyssey, there are no hit points or health. When you are hit, your danger level rises. That's it. This leads you to drawing trauma cards, and they will increase in severity as you gain more and more danger. When any danger is dealt to you, raise your danger value on the Triskelion. So now we're at 2. And then, before resolving any subsequent effects, immediately perform a trauma draw. To perform a trauma draw, you'll consult this table on your Titan's card. This is known as a trauma table. So in this case, we have 2 danger. You can see for 1 to 3 danger, we will draw a minor trauma card and resolve it. We have feign death. If we were at danger 4 through 6, it would be a major trauma card. If we were at danger 7 to 9, it would be a grave trauma card. And 10 plus, meaning anything above 9, is an obol. Some trauma cards are instantaneous, while others will persist throughout the battle, or force you to gain a condition card. After resolving the trauma card effects, you will discard it, unless otherwise stated, of course. Any trauma card you discard should be put at the bottom of the corresponding deck, which means theoretically it could be seen again. It's possible certain game effects will specifically instruct you to resolve a trauma card even without having you gain danger. In that case, you will draw one according to your current danger level. It's also possible you'll be instructed to draw a trauma card of a specific severity. In that case, simply draw the indicated trauma card. After you've resolved a trauma card draw, remember to resolve any lingering attack effects, then proceed to the after attack effects. It should be noted that a trauma draw is resolved only when you are dealt danger from an attack, not when you gain danger from other sources, unless it goes over 9, which we'll explain in a moment. If you have to draw an obol, either as a result of a trauma draw or when another effect instructs you to, you're in real peril. There is a 50-50 chance at the beginning of the game that you will die on the spot. There are only 2 obol cards here. One says you live, one says you die. More cards may be added or changed through other game effects as you proceed through the campaign. Some game effects may refer to the You Died obol cards. This term includes all obol cards that result in the Titan dying. Resolved and discarded obols are always shuffled back into the obol deck. It should be noted that occasionally drawing an obol is referred to as an obol draw, though it is technically still a trauma draw. It also should be noted that if you are ever forced to perform 2 or more obol draws at the same time, you die. Also, though the Triskelion only goes to 9 danger, you can and will gain danger over this value. In such a case, raise the danger to 9, but for the purpose of the following trauma draw, treat it as if it was increased to the actual value you would reach. Raising your danger over 9 always triggers a trauma draw, even if it wasn't dealt during an attack. In general, the obol deck, as we've said, consists of 2 cards. One allows you to live, the other, you die. However, if you gain so much danger that you go way above your obol threshold, you may be forced to add additional obol cards to the deck, severely decreasing your chances of surviving an obol draw. If your danger temporarily goes up to 14 or higher, remember to always consult the massive danger chart found on page 43. You also can find the massive danger chart on the reference page in the back of the book, page 80. A card added to the obol deck as a result of massive danger is added to the deck immediately before resolving an obol draw, and it remains there until the end of battle. This makes it harder for all Titans to survive the subsequent obol draws during that battle. Most AI cards, as well as some body part cards and other game elements, give the players an opportunity to react to the situation. Most often this will be a Primordial Attack outside of their normal turn. This icon here with the exclamation mark is what you're looking for. This is known as a window of opportunity. On an AI card, this symbol will always be placed to the left side of the card next to the attack effect. Whenever you encounter a window of opportunity symbol preceding the AI instructions, you may activate reaction abilities immediately before you resolve the instruction. As we pointed out before, the Iapetus Lifeguard has one of those abilities. During a single window of opportunity, each Titan may activate any number of reaction abilities in any order, but no more than one ability with the same name per Titan. Some trauma cards, abilities, and other game elements may allow Titans to act during a Primordial or Titan attack, slightly disrupting the natural flow of the game. If this disruption is big enough, it may trigger a chain break. As you can see here, Feigned Death immediately allows a chain break. A chain break immediately ends the original attack, invalidating all of its lingering attack effects as well as after attack effects. Another way a chain break may occur is if a Titan bonus attack or additional Primordial attack is triggered during a Primordial attack, for example, by a trauma card. This causes the original Primordial attack to immediately end. In the case of a Primordial Zone attack, a chain break performed by one Titan ignores any lingering attack effects and after attack effects for this Titan only. Any other target of the attack must still resolve, because remember, zone attacks occur to all Titans at the same time. The same would be true for simultaneous attacks. If, for any reason, a Titan moves out of its weapon's effective range after it attacks the Primordial but before it rolls the power dice, this causes a chain break and the attack immediately ends. If a chain break happens during a Titan attack, resolve the clear the Kratos pool and the second ability window steps of the Titan attack sequence before you proceed to resolving the effect that caused the chain break. It should be noted that Titan bonus attacks triggered during a Titan attack are considered to be follow-up attacks. They do not cause chain breaks and are instead resolved after you finish resolving the current attack. That's different than if the bonus attack occurs during a Primordial attack, which does chain break the Primordial. Basically, Titans aren't going to want to chain break their friends. Using Fate to re-roll your attack and evasion dice can be a very useful tool, but tempting Fate too often can result in some pretty negative consequences. Often on AI cards, you'll see that an attack is boosted if the target has a certain Fate threshold. So in this case, if the Titan had 3 or more Fate, then you have to add one more evasion die to the attack. The after attack section of the AI card has additional effects that happen after you resolve or evade the main part of the Primordial attack. In this case, we have Pushback 3. It should be noted that these are completely separate from the attack, therefore they get resolved even if the actual attack was fully evaded or if it wasn't performed at all. The only thing capable of canceling the after attack effect is a chain break or the mercy rule. And we'll discuss the mercy rule in the next video. It should be noted that unless stated otherwise, all after attack effects targeting a single Titan affect the original target of the attack. An after attack instruction on an AI card that targets multiple Titans is resolved against each of those Titans as those attacks are resolved. However, if an attack includes an after final attack instruction, it only takes effect after resolving the attack against each of its targets. Once you finish resolving the after attack effect, if there is any, discard the AI card. If there are no more cards in the AI deck, shuffle the discard to form a new AI deck. At this point, some Primordials may perform additional attacks after their mandatory AI draw, while others will trigger trait effects and other effects. Any additional attacks are resolved using the normal rules explained previously. Every trait that triggers an additional effect will introduce its own rules. Finally, you will end the Primordial Round. Sometimes the Primordial will have effects that trigger at the end of the round. In that case, it's resolved after all other actions. If the Primordial has more than one end of round effect, the players may resolve these effects in any order they choose. Finally, remember to unexhaust any Argo abilities. We'll discuss Argo abilities in the next video. And that's everything you need to know to set up your battles and play the Primordial Round of Aeon Trespass Odyssey. Be sure to come back for the next video where we'll cover the Titan round. This will be a pretty in-depth video. We'll be covering about 18 pages of rules in that video. So it'll be one of the longer ones in the series, but it will then get you pretty much where you need to be able to play this fantastic game. After that, we'll have one more part 6, which will be relatively short, but we're going to dig into some of the gear, terrain, and ability keywords. If you haven't watched the previous videos in the series, be sure to go back and check out Part 1, the basics, Part 2, Voyage Phase, Part 3, Adventure Phase. And until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.